Any other items? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Mr. Barbieri. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. So we move to all right, before we go, we voted, all those in favor, all those opposed to the motion on the consent agenda carries, so we need to move to new business, and we have a couple good cause statements that I need to read at this point. LD4 was added to take appropriate action with respect to the Angelette Green versus School Board of Palm Beach County case. And the second item, LD4, was added to this agenda after the publication of the agenda. On Tuesday, October 9th, mediation took place and a proposed settlement was reached by the party subject to the approval of the board. Both parties requested immediate action from the board in order to avoid additional expenditure of time and costs that would otherwise be incurred by the parties in preparing for trial. This item then was added to the online agenda on November 11th with sufficient notice under these circumstances. So based on that, I believe good cause exists for adding this item to the agenda. P2 was added and P3 was added. Those two items are on the agenda to allow for employees impacted on these two items to begin their employment as soon as possible. So if you will refresh your agenda for P2 or P1 to be pulled, we'll give everybody a second and then move to new business. We all set? Our first item, COM 7. Dr. Fenoy.
COM 7, I recommend the board proclaim October 2018 as LGBT History Month.
Your motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Dr. Robinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed. Motion carries 7-0. COM 8.
COM 8, I recommend the board proclaim October 2018 as National Bullying Prevention and Awareness Month.
Motion by Dr. Robinson, second by Mrs. Brill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed. Motion carries 7-0. COM 9.
COM 9, I recommend the board proclaim October 14th through the 20th, 2018 as Mediation Week and October 18th, 2018 as Conflict Resolution Day.
Is there a motion? Motion by Dr. Robinson, second by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed. Motion carries 7-0. FMPF1.
FMPF1, I recommend the board receive and accept the monthly contract and disbursement report as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Mrs. Whitfield. I think, Dr. Robinson, you pulled that one.
Yep. This is my standing decision to reject the acceptance of these monthly purchasing reports because I don't think we're living up to expectations. Thank you.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-1 with Dr. Robinson voting against. IG4.
IG4, I recommend the board receive and file the audit of the competitive solicitations process for projects funded by the 1 penny sales tax, of which half goes to the district. Report number 2018-10.
Is there a motion? Mrs. Andrews, second by Mrs. Whitfield. Dr. Robinson, I think you pulled that one.
Yes, I pulled it. I'm trying to find the exact language. There was language in here about unbalanced bidding, and the part that I wanted to question was the recommendation from the audit was that we establish a practice that says that if staff determines that it's an unbalanced bid, that the bid would be rejected. And staff's response was may be rejected. And so I I just think if it's strong enough for staff to know that it's unbalanced, that it should be rejected, not may be rejected. I'm not quite sure why staff said may.
Other questions? Mrs. Andrews?
Yes, I specifically spoke to Mr. Chu about that, and he gave me an explanation through this board chair and superintendent to Mr. Chu.
Mr. Chu?
When we make recommendations, they are up to staff if they are willing to correct or make adjustment to it. And however, we might not necessarily agree with their acts, so we may have to come back when we do the audit, and we have to cite again. So it's now the decision belongs to the superintendent and his staff to decide which way to go.
Mr. Barbieri?
Mr. Superintendent, do we need to have a policy fix here to make sure that it shall be rejected if that's what the board believes is the intent of the process? Mr. Chu, are you suggesting that it shall be rejected?
Well, if they agree with us without objection, I don't see why they used
Mrs. Andrews?
Yeah, my understanding from you, Mr. Chu, is that they have this time frame, and you're going to look at it again. If for some reason they're not following what you've actually stated for them to do, that you will bring it back to us.
Right, yes.
Right.
All right. I think what I'm hearing is that this will come back to us after you've had a chance then to review the whole issue with staff and everything. Okay. Any other questions? Dr. Robinson?
So, as I understand this process, so the Inspector General, through the audit process, made a recommendation that unbalanced bids would be rejected. The staff's response was, may be rejected. I think the board needs to weigh in on how we expect this process to be handled. Now, as I understand it, maybe there's some gray zone in whether maybe this particular response, we might disagree as to whether or not it's an unbalanced bid.
There you go.
But that's not the question. The language suggested that if you determine it's an unbalanced bid, it shall be rejected. Now, that to me, that's pretty clear. Now, we could disagree if it's unbalanced. Mm-hmm. That's not what I'm addressing. We determined it's unbalanced. In my opinion, it shall be rejected. So that's the issue I think that we need to weigh in on here.
Any other discussion? You know, I think it's an important issue, but I think since this is the first time we've had this discussion, I would not be in a position to make a decision in either part of it, because it does make sense if it is unbalanced, and that's the recommendation. But I think Mr. Chu should get a chance to review this with Mr. Burke and staff before we go forward.
Yes.
We need a motion on this. The motion is to approve the report. Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Mrs. Whitfield. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-1 with Mr. Barbieri voting against. Next item, LD4.
Yes, LD4. I recommend the board authorize the settlement of the case Angelette Green versus School Board of Palm Beach County, Florida, case number 918 CV 808488, USDC versus South District of Florida, in the amount of $30,000, and authorize the chairman, superintendent, and general counsel to sign all necessary documents.
There a motion? Motion by Dr. Robinson, second by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Our next item is P2. And before we do the personnel, our P1, before we do P1, the board always recognizes at board meetings the families of employees from the district who passed away recently. And tonight we want to recognize the families of 4 people. The first one was Maria Ambach, who was an elementary teacher gifted at Waters Edge Elementary. She was born in 1957, passed away July of 2018. Sincere Fazakis, who was an elementary art teacher at Whispering Pines Elementary, born in 1955, passed away in September 2018. Deborah Johnson was a senior media automation tech in teaching and learning, born in 1957, passed away in September of 2018. And Sandra Pierre-Louis, who was a school food service worker at Galaxy Elementary, born in 1984, passed away in July of 2018. So if we can take a moment of silence in remembrance of these employees. Thank you. Dr. Fenoy, P1.
Yes, P1. I recommend the board approve the personnel agenda as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. McQuinn, second by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? Dr. Robinson.
I just want to get clarification on the gentleman that the speaker discussed. It was essentially job abandonment? Okay, cool.
Okay, Mark Mitchell is here. Yeah.
Mark, you can come forward and speak to that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. Yes, that's correct, Dr. Robinson. There's a process for job abandonment by district policy.
Okay, and so,
Dr. Robinson.
so it appeared to me from listening to the speaker that at least the speaker thought that there were some extenuating circumstances, and so, and according to our policy and practice, that didn't matter. Is that my?
You are correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Barbieri.
So this teacher was incarcerated, and how many days did he miss before you decided it was job abandonment? Was it 3 days? What?
Yeah, it's 10 days actually for no call, no show.
So he was gone for 10 days? And his brother apparently tried to use a power of attorney to apply for a leave, and was that done after the 10-day period, or was it done during the 10-day period?
You're getting into the various details of this situation, but I can tell you by our policies, when you apply for a leave, you actually have to have some leave time to apply for the leave, and if the leave was denied, it was denied because he was not eligible.
Okay.
Mr. Mitchell means he had no accumulated leave time.
That's my understanding,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Dr. Robinson?
Is there anything that prevents him from being rehired?
He's free to apply.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is P2. Dr. Fenoy.
Yes, I recommend the board approve the personal addendum as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Mrs. Brill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. P3.
I recommend the board approve personal addendum 2 as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Mr. Barbieri. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. PIR 1. Dr. Fenoy.
PIR 1, I recommend the board approve the real estate sale and purchase contract, including a post-closing occupancy agreement for acquisition of an improved parcel of land containing 0.21 acres, more or less, located adjacent to Addison Meisner Elementary, as herein described. Approve as a resolution declaring structures located on the property to be acquired by the school board to be unnecessary for educational purposes, surplus and without commercial value, and authorize the superintendent and chairman to sign all necessary documents.
Motion by Mr. Barbieri, second by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? Dr. Fenoy, just a quick question. How will this piece of property be used in case somebody from the public's wondering what we just are doing on this one?
I'll have Ms. Paul come speak to the specifics.
The property will be used as part of the new Addison Meisner. So we've already acquired other properties, so it goes with that.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. That concludes our regular agenda, so we'll move to non-agenda speakers. I'll call 3 at a time. Carl Mohammed, Ruth Beck, Jill Testa.